public input to address the board. Would you like to?
Yes. Is it usually just one person who shows up?
Usually nobody shows up.
Welcome.
So
Come on up here.
Come right up to the table, if you would, please, and introduce yourself.
Sure. I'm Nancy Barron, and I'm a parent of,
Hi there. Of Matt Barron.
of Matt Barron, who's a 9th grader, and I have 2 current 7th grade students at Harwood Union Middle School, Matt, or Luke and John. And recently there was an announcement that 8th grade algebra was going to be eliminated from the curriculum and offered as an optional online course to be taken on students' own time. And you know, I just wanted to speak to the board. I've had some emails back and forth with Lisa. I copied you, and I just have some concerns, and I guess let me start off by saying it's not just my concern. I might be the only one who showed up tonight and sat in the seat, but if Dan Raddick were here tonight, he's been copied on some emails, and it's been a very lively discussion. And I would say the most vocal are people who have had kids go through 8th grade algebra before and are now in high school, so we have some experience. I think coming in to the middle school, it's a little hard to get your feet wet and find your voice and feel like you can have commentary, but with a little experience under your belt. So one of the things that I just wanted to talk about was the fact that the process for a lot of these curriculum changes, I mean, Matt hasn't been in high school enough, so I don't know how it is at high school, but at the middle school level, it's really not very transparent. In fact, when Matt was in 7th grade, he was in advanced math, and not until after the change took place were we kind of told very informally, kind of off the cuff, there's no advanced math anymore. And it was just turned into a regular class. And I had some concern that algebra might be eliminated from the curriculum, and I reached out and I was told that that would not happen without a public meeting where input could be taken. So I was really kind of taken by surprise to get an email that said, by the way, no 8th grade algebra. And I think this kind of speaks to history. I know that there used to be a 7th grade honors or algebra class that was eliminated as an option some years ago. And I know some people who've tried really hard to be able to have that option, but it's just not available. And kind of the conversations that we've been having, these parents and I, are that an online course might not be a bad idea within the confines of the school day. It's certainly not optimal, but we know, having our kids have gone through 8th grade algebra, that they have quite frankly struggled with the instruction. And so an online option may be an improvement over that, but would that be an improvement over a really well-constructed, well-taught 8th grade algebra class? Probably not. Having the kids take 2 math classes, and I know through Lisa we've had some back and forth, and maybe we haven't been given enough information, but I didn't feel completely convinced that having the kids take a class that connected math plus an algebra class was really the right thing to do for these kids. A lot of these kids, as you know, who are in the higher level classes also are very active in sports. They're in band. So when would these kids take the class? 24/7? Well, 8th graders don't operate 24/7. There's a time when they need to unwind. So it just seems unreasonable to us to ask and to see that that is a viable option. If it were something where we were saying, look, they're going to get all the instruction that they did before, and we have an online option to extend their learning, then that might be something that people would be interested in opting into. The note mentioned that it was really rich in concepts, and this would help them when they got to high school. And I took a brief, exhaustive survey 4 out of 4 kids that I surveyed who were in 8th grade algebra last year are breezing through geometry. They don't have a problem with it at all. So having them sit through 2 classes to then be, I mean, what is that? Is that less engaged in geometry? In the letter, there wasn't any information on how this would percolate up. How does that set them up for increasing their level of classes once they get to high school? Not, well, they could take algebra and double up on classes and have calculus along with something else in high school. So I think, you know, really what we'd like to see is something, I don't know if it's the board, I don't know if it's with Sheila, but something where we get parents together and we can not only have, you know, the current set of parents, but also parents who are coming into the system because they're not even aware of this change. But you know, we have a fear of declining enrollment, and I have to say, if I had been making a decision and I was at a point in my life where I was looking at both, at either just middle school and high school, or my kids were about to come out of elementary school, and I saw that a school did not have algebra in its curriculum, shell burns. You know, there's other places, and I think, you know, I hate to bring up Warren, but Warren does a really good job of making itself a magnet school, giving families reasons to settle there, and I think trimming back on these types of classes does not, it's not an effective lure for people as they're making decisions on where they're going to locate. So that's all I have to say. So, but really what I would like to see is a larger discussion. And as I told you, Lisa, I would be happy to help publicize that meeting and get the word out and have interested families really have a conversation around the concept.
And we'd be interested in meeting with parents to provide information, but truly the curriculum decisions around what gets offered at the within a curriculum is truly made at the building level, along with central office through the district coordinator, as well as the department head in the department itself. We've not had, we've made all kinds of tweaks and changes in curriculum, in courses being offered, 7 through 12 over the years, and we've not ever really put that out to a community decision. So I don't want to, I in no way want to sound dismissive of your concerns. I think part of our reason for sending the information out was trying to get out in front with information that this change was coming. It's March, it's not going to happen until, next fall, until the next start of the school year. And provide information. We do not have all the details of the online opportunity completely determined at this point, so we didn't want to put that out there, but we felt we needed to assure parents that there would be an option, so that if students were algebra ready in 8th grade, it wasn't like we didn't want to completely not provide an option for that. Some information that I have and I'm willing, I can give to you tonight is around the CMP2 math curriculum. And it's every unit identified, and the bolded area is about the algebraic concepts and instruction that occurs in the CMP2 curriculum in the 8th grade. So it's, and it's extremely extensive. And that's not information that as a parent you might already have or readily know. So I want to share that with you.
So I guess if that's true and that is such a rich curriculum, then the kids who take that curriculum, if we, and I would invite you to share the data with us, that the kids who take that curriculum and not algebra do as well as they go through high school as the kids who do algebra.
And we don't have that data yet because we've only implemented, this is only our second year of CMP2-8 as far as the implementation phase. CMP2 in 6th and 7th grade is now in its 3rd year. And we felt after the information we were receiving and the data we were collecting through common assessments between both middle schools, that at the 7th grade level, we could remove that algebra or that honors. It was advanced math in 7th grade. It wasn't an algebra course in 7th grade. It was advanced math. And 2 years ago, we made that change. and now we're ready to make this change in 8th grade. What the research is showing us is that we are taking 7th grade students, 7th grade math students, and moving them into a 9th grade curriculum by offering algebra in 8th grade. They are missing an entire year of mathematical concepts that are important for them, not just in algebra, but as they go through geometry, algebra 2,
And so
calculus, trigonometry.
And how is geometry being adjusted then? So if these kids are going to be so much more well-prepared, right? Well, so let's say they do take this class and then they take algebra. So how is is that an honors geometry? What's happening to help that flow up?
Right.
Because a lot of the kids aren't struggling. I know many kids who have gone through the system. I know some who took 7th grade algebra and went through and, would you say that they missed out on concepts in 7th grade or 8th grade that crippled them? It's a hard argument to make.
Part of what's informing our decision too is data that we are collecting through the work in the math department around common assessments, around the NECAP, looking at, is this a matter of trying to get to calculus? Because we ran some numbers, and it's a very small percentage of our students that take geometry in 9th grade because they've had algebra in 8th grade. A very small percentage of those students go on to calculus later on. So I guess I'm not sure what the perception or what the need for taking algebra 1 in 8th grade is, what the driving factor behind that is. Because a student doesn't have to double up in 8th grade. A student doesn't have to even double up in 9th grade. They can double up later on if that's their path and aptitude for increased mathematics and a passion for that. There are opportunities, and we're not removing those opportunities. We're trying to provide the best mathematical instruction for our 8th grade students, to provide them the best foundation as they continue mathematical education in the future. I mean, that's what we're learning. That's what the data is showing us. I mean, I'm happy to share what we have. I'm happy to continue the dialogue and conversation. I mean, there are quite a few students that are in 8th grade algebra, and if they're truly algebra ready, they should be earning A's in 8th grade algebra. And between both middle schools, we're not seeing that. And then we're seeing that drop off with the information I have here, and it's over the last 3 years, so it's not a huge amount of data to compare it to. And we don't have the data moving forward, like I said, with the CMP2. What we're seeing right now is what we had hoped for with CMP2, because we're seeing that increased mathematical understanding in classes. So it seems it's what we believe is best mathematical instruction. And I mean, if Jean wants to chime in on the work we've been doing when you talk about what's going to happen with the geometry. Right now, the entire high school math department has been in the process over the last 3 years in redesigning their curriculum and looking at best practices, a best practice model around delivering instruction. We've put a lot of money and a lot of time and a lot of resources into that process. So will this CMP2 curriculum have an impact in geometry for these students? I don't know. But we don't have the data yet because we haven't been delivering the curriculum long enough. And if the data shows that and warrants that, I can't imagine that we as a school wouldn't look at that seriously and make those informed decisions for the future moving forward. I don't have the data yet.
But if you don't have the data, then how can you make the decision that you can eliminate algebra and that this curriculum will be as good? You don't have the data for the kids flowing through the system. We have the data presently from the program, absolutely. For these incoming 8th graders, we absolutely do have the data. But you don't have that data as how it affects them in high school. You don't have the data of how this class compares. You don't have a control group. So you don't have a group that took CMP Math 2 and Algebra,
Right.
and have gone on to high school and to
Right.
see how, so that's making a decision without
But we
all the
do
data.
have the data that shows us the path that students have taken when they've taken algebra in 9th grade or when they've taken geometry in 9th grade. And the progression to calculus, which is what seems to be the driving effect on this, doesn't show that all of these kids that started in algebra in 8th grade and then geometry in 9th grade tracked on up to calculus in high school. There's like, well, I won't do the math, but it's a very small percentage.
May I ask a question and make sure I understand right? So at first I admit it sounded alarming, oh my, no
Yeah.
8th grade algebra, but it sounds like, as I've listened to you,
Yeah.
that it's a matter of the concepts, algebraic concepts are being repackaged in a course that is no longer called 8th grade algebra, but it's being packaged and delivered. I mean, they'll still
Absolutely.
learn this.
Absolutely.
They're just not learning it in a segment called 8th grade algebra.
It's not delineated out in just algebra.
Got it.
It's
Okay.
making connections around applications of algebraic applications in a number of different ways.
That builds a foundation
builds the
for whatever
foundation.
you call the
Absolutely.
next step.
Absolutely.
With the goal still being that everybody's gonna learn what they need to learn.
Absolutely.
It's just not, it sounds to me like it's not being called what it used to be called.
And I would say it's sensitive to the developmental needs of that age group too. And so it's abstract concepts are, algebra is rugged for middle schoolers, but the contextual framework of the curriculum is really developmentally appropriate for these for 8th graders. And I've had lots of conversations with parents about algebra and a lot of conversations with kids about algebra. And I'm drawing the same conclusion that the CMP curriculum is, you can't shake a stick at it. I mean, it's pretty good.
So what other top schools are eliminating algebra in 8th grade and going with this?
There are in the comparables, we'd have to get that list, but it's something that Sheila and I talked with. I don't have that right now at hand, and I don't want to say it's this or it's that, but it's certainly information we can get and share with you. Absolutely. We'll be sure to do that.
Did you want to?
Yeah, I think some things that, I could try to share that might be helpful. It sounds sometimes like the conversation is an either or, that students would be taking the CMP2 or they would be taking algebra, or the timeline for taking algebra would be different. And what I would share is that on the state level, in Vermont, as we have looked at how our students perform both in the high school arena of mathematics and how successful they are post-secondary school, we know that they're not doing as well as they could, and that the old traditional trajectory, if you will, was something that was more sort of computation based as it related to the problem solving. So the thinking here is that the deep understanding of mathematical concepts that truly leads to problem solving in a way that incorporates things like probability and statistics or the integration of the mathematics has been lacking. And that's why they believe that students haven't been doing as well as they could. CMP2 is the Connected Math Program, as you're familiar with, is something that's been on the move in the state and replacing other more traditional curriculums for probably 5 years. So while we are sort of late coming to the party, there are other systems and organizations that have seen very significant impact because truly the old programs were not nearly as rigorous. They just simply weren't rigorous enough in the area of application. So the learning would happen at the thinking level, and I feel a little comfortable talking about this because a long, long time ago I did teach high school math, so I'm not completely out of my world here. And so it needed to be broadened in terms of conceptual understanding in a deeper kind of way and its overall application to unfamiliar circumstances. And that's what the new Common Core Standards ask students to do and to relate that information. CMP2 has 8 units in the 8th grade that are very deep algebra. And I brought this because I suspected we might be talking about it tonight. And so whether it's the Pythagorean theorem, exponential relationships, you could look right through this curriculum and see that this is not the old 8th grade math curriculum of years ago. It just simply isn't. It's very strong in that. It has a pretty strong geometry component and a pretty significant component in probability and statistics. While you have some data 4 for 4, I can tell you that a lot of students who do exceedingly well, high-end math students all through their math career and through Algebra 1, don't do well in geometry. Geometry is a different beast. So we feel that those kids in geometry, and certainly by the time they get to calculus or pre-calc honors, really don't have the requisite foundation that they need. It's spotty. There's gaps of learning that is simply missing. So for about a 5-year period, the state has really been looking at what's the best approach to that, and they concluded that it's CMP2. In aligning then and analyzing where kids need to be by the time they leave, there's a huge gap if you don't have CMP2. So the challenge for us, while we might not all agree, is to be able to provide that strong foundation for all of mathematics. And a couple of years ago, Harwood did some serious work by eliminating a number of math courses that weren't as rich, weren't as rigorous, and weren't as demanding, so that all students have to take algebra. And I'm sure you're aware that in the news right now, the governor and the commissioner are talking about algebra and geometry and where they place in high school and how it aligns to the new Common Core standards. That's all well and good if the foundation is strong enough. So this really is truly an attempt to go a step further into rigor and depth around mathematical applications and conceptual understanding in a way that'll put our students in a very well-positioned situation to go as far as they can in math. We also are looking at ways where they wouldn't necessarily have to double up. So the online learning could be supported by the math lab. You talked about, and I agree with you, some kids will really struggle at the 8th grade level with Algebra 1. Where are they going to get that support? There's a math lab component here at Harwood that would support them in that math. There would be opportunities so that, let's say they're in the CMP2 class and maybe they've completed some of the work early, they would move into working on their Algebra 2. The teacher in class would help to support that Algebra 2 learning, or they would go. So their CMP2 math teacher would be able to help support their Algebra 2 experience. We don't need to get in all those details. I'm sorry, Algebra 1 experience.
Yeah.
I'm ahead of myself. So the implementation isn't the kind of thinking where students will just go off online and sort of fly by the seat of their pants and do it on their own. We're going farther down a supportive path for that, and we'll look forward to talking to parents about that. But we are saying that you can double up at the 8th grade level with CMP2 or Algebra 1, or we're looking to expand opportunities at the high school level 9 to 12, where you might double up within your high school model if your goal is to get all the way through calculus, moving backwards. So that's, while Harwood, when you're saying she's making the decision without data, it might not be Harwood's data, but I think that if Sheila were here, she'd be able to report to you verbatim the statewide data and why we've considered it so strongly and why we think this is such a viable and good, solid option for our students.
I'm unconvinced. I mean, I would buy, and I don't know, this is probably not the place. I think a forum is probably a better place, and maybe a forum is not the right thing to call it, but a conversation. You know, certainly not being a math teacher, I would say it's hard to have a curriculum conversation with people who have been through it. At the same time, I don't see my kids necessarily always getting challenged, and I have a feeling sometimes that what we do is this will be good to raise overall scores, but it won't necessarily be good for the kids who are really ready for algebra. You know, being in a class, and instruction has something to do with it, and what you're saying is it's the same instruction. So you're going to ask a teacher who's possibly already stretched. I might argue that some of the grades in algebra aren't due just to the kids, but to the way the concepts are presented. So if that's the case, then having this in an online class, I don't know how much that will really help. But I think what we need to do is have more than just me having the conversation. And I think this would have been a better conversation to have, or a better time to have it, before the letter went out. Like I was assured that would happen, that something like this would not be dropped on us, that it would be something that was presented to the community, and it would be a discussion, and it would be a larger thing. So I guess in my mind, I'm still calling it a proposed change, whether that's right or wrong, but that's where I am. And I would like to see that larger discussion. And like I said, I would be happy to organize it. I would be happy to get parents out for it. But I think that it should be a conversation between more than just me and you, obviously.
Any board members that want to speak? Go ahead, please.
Well, I was going to say, I think we're always willing to have the conversation, and when it comes, as I started earlier, and I think when it comes around curriculum and those curriculum decisions, that conversation is around informing and providing information to parents to demonstrate the path we're taking and why we're taking it. But what I don't want you to, leave here thinking that because we have a meeting or we don't have a meeting, and people show up, and because it might not be a decision that you'd like to see happen, that would change our decision. I think that we've done a lot of the work, gathered information with the support and help of the district curriculum coordinator and the work that she does with other district curriculum directors across the state, with the implementation of Common Core coming. We truly believe that this is the best decision to support mathematical instruction for our students. And I just want to be really clear in restating that. I think we have to provide more information around this decision and options around what it might look like for particular interests, and if you want to take Algebra 1, if you're Algebra 1 ready, and what that might look like. And so we still need to do more homework and more work with that, because we are not yet prepared to say this is what it's absolutely going to look like. We don't have the finite details to it. But I feel very solid in saying that moving forward in this direction is the right thing to do. And Crossett Brook Middle School is planning to do the same, is making the same decision, because we're really working together cohesively with many of our departments and much of our curriculum across both middle schools, so they come to high school with similar experiences and preparation. And that's what this truly is about. It's about laying the foundation for preparation for high school instruction and learning as they enter 9th grade. So I mean, we can we can talk offline, or you can email me and contact me, and we'll continue to have discussion. We want to answer the questions. I don't want any parent not feeling that they haven't gotten all of the information, or that we're not being transparent in providing that information. And we definitely do need to communicate more information about this decision. Absolutely, I would agree with that.
So that would leave a meeting. Because I have an email out to you, so I don't know the best way to make that happen.
Okay, I can follow up. We'll talk with Sheila and follow up with providing that information in a way, the best way to provide that information. So.
Last chance, Dale.
And if you do, I appreciated the email going out to both schools at the same time. I happen to be on the Waterbury Duxbury board as well.
Yep.
So I hope that any discussions with parents, seeing as how a lot of the concerns are about what happens in high school, ideally those should be a joint meeting, so that we're not getting slightly different information to the different sets of parents.
And
it's a hard issue.
I can say, Dale, too, that Tom has received questions from parents, and Tom, Sheila, Jean, and I have worked on crafting the same informational response to all of the, so that the Crossett Brook parent is getting the same information that we're sending to, I think Sheila communicated with you, Daniel, on some responses, and Nancy. Quite frankly, Nancy is the only parent that has contacted me, and I don't know how many parents have contacted Daniel. But other than that, from this end, we've not had many questions about the decision. And the questions that Tom has fielded, we have shared those from those parents because they are coming into, or will be coming into high school.
We didn't have anybody at our meeting, and we had one question brought up. I mean,
Right.
It's something that I know these are difficult issues, but as a parent who's had kids go through the system, they were both very math oriented. I understand your concerns, but I see the effort. So as a board member, I'm looking for the kind of rationale and the basis for the administrators making their decision, because they're the ones that make those decisions. We just need to sort of verify that they're doing it in a way that's logical. And
Understood.
I've been impressed with how much more attention is being provided to mathematics than was the case when my boys were in middle school, going into high school. Things are changing, and I see the schools doing a better job of trying to respond for our students. So it's important to be consistent, and that's because it's.
I will say there's probably, what would you say, Dan, eight, 9 concerned parents on the chain?
Yeah,
And there hasn't been. I've been passing along the information that you provide. So the fact that they haven't reached out to you directly, I think they might have felt like they would have gotten the same response, which it sounds like they would have.
Yes.
It sounds like they would have gotten exactly the same response.
It would have been extremely similar based on what their questions
Yeah.
may or may not have been. We kind of have a
Boilerplate.
well, it's something that we worked on together, but then there are specific responses to any specific question, like around the online, or what does this mean, if my child wants to get, take calculus, and what does this look like? There were some parents that had very pointed or specific questions other than just about the decision around the Algebra 1 not being offered in 8th grade. And so those were, more directed with a response from either Tom or Sheila or I.
So just for clarification, when Lisa references Tom, do you know who she's talking about?
I'm sorry, Tom Drake, he's the
Okay.
principal.
Yeah.
I apologize. I know who he is.
I didn't know if she did, that's all.
I do.
So did you have?
Just 2 things I want to share. We are putting together a document on frequently asked questions so that we really can do a comprehensive share of information about the sort of nitty-gritty of the math instruction at the 8th grade level and the high school level. So I think that we're working on that quickly here to put together so that parents can have that. And I just want to leave the conversation with this point. There are 8 units in the CMP2 8 program, 8 units of very in-depth algebra instruction. So in some fashion, we are raising the standard for all students at a much younger grade level around algebra in what I believe is a very deep way. And I understand the challenges around sort of the traditional for credit if you take Algebra 1 as an 8th grader. But that aside, I wouldn't want us to leave the conversation thinking that we are not teaching algebra in 8th grade, and the only way to get algebra is to take Algebra 1, when those 8 units are very, very tough. They're rigorous units.
Well, and I think that to do that, you would need, whenever you teach something like that, if you're teaching it to a team of talented kids, or if you're not talented, but some that catch on easier, let's say, and some that catch on more slowly. It takes a very, it's hard to teach to both levels at once. And then if you're proposing that, so generally one end or the other comes out a little short in that equation. So, that's something to keep in mind with grouping the kids all together and trying to teach a rigorous curriculum. How rigorous does it really end up getting for the kids who catch on more quickly? And obviously that, that's what I'm most concerned. I'm not, I'm not unconcerned that the kids, might get swept away. But honestly, my primary concern is that the curriculum might be very rigorous, but when you have a very diverse class, that it doesn't always get taught to, you know, to the top. It doesn't always challenge everybody. It's hard. It's hard. I mean, I can't imagine how hard it would be to challenge a whole diverse group of students. I'm not saying it's not a difficult problem, but maybe more
True
difficult
throughout
when you have a
schooling.
range.
It is. It's always the challenge throughout all of schooling.
Unless.
And I mean, the
Unless
other
you have a
thing-
separate class.
The only other additional piece I would like to mention is that we made basically the same decision about 7th grade advanced math. And, you know, the work in 7th grade CMP2 has really supported that decision. And I think if Donna Cook were here, she would have testimonial to that because of what she sees every day.
Okay, so again, I mean, I think this is more than everybody else wants to hear. But if those kids were better set up in 7th grade, say maths year, then those kids should be doing better in algebra this year. The kids who were in 7th grade math last year should be doing better in Algebra 1 this year. And so I would love to see that. I would love to see that that's actually what's happening.
And again, I don't have that internal data because CMP 2.8 wasn't implemented the same year as CMP 2.7.
Right.
It was a year later.
That's our dilemma.
Because, so you're not being able to compare the same
Love to get
kind
to
of
that.
cohort of information. And that's kind of what makes that internal data challenging to provide for you. Or to be able to say, yes, that's, there it is.
Okay, so
I've taken up, I
that's
thank you
fine.
for
No,
taking all the
the board
time.
is-
It's beneficial to be the only one who shows up.
We had a lot of airtime.
And I look forward to continuing this
Okay.
discussion.
Thank you.
Thank you.